want to influence you, I got to let you influence me first.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
if I want you to trust me, I got to trust you first. And if I want you to listen to me, I got to listen to you first. And if I want you to care for me, I got to care for you first. As a matter of fact, when we turn our walls to windows and create the transparency the community expects, then we'll be able to build relationships.
Yeah.
Which takes the golden rule and morphs it to a defensible system called the platinum rule.
Vulnerability is the key to trust. It opens that door. It's the key, literally, to open the door to trust.
I said, okay. And he said, from that day at the age of 15 until today at the age of 17, when I woke up, every morning when my feet hit the floor, the first thing I thought about doing was hurting you. He said, but today is the first day that I could say, after having a conversation and after you being here, today's the first day I could say that.
Hey, are you a member of the community who truly wants to have a safe partnership with your local law enforcement? Or better yet, are you an officer, a dedicated officer that desires to do your job as required, but with the support of the community you serve? Well, listen, today, this guest I have today is for you. His name is Jason Lehman, okay? Jason Lehman is the founder of, check this out, Why'd You Stop Me? Yes, I said that correctly. Why'd You Stop Me? Also known as WYSM, all right? He founded Why You Stop Me in 2014. And since then, okay, check these numbers out. Since then, he has trained over 28,000 peace officers and 250,000 community members on how to make this relationship better between law enforcement and the community. Listen, can we welcome Jason Lehman to the human side with Officer Jill? What's up, Jason?
What's going on?
Nothing much, man.
Man, those glasses have me. I love these glasses. It just makes me want to talk to you.
Pop? You like the pop? Like the little red pop,
yeah,
right? A little red pop. Listen,
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. As someone who is also operating in this challenging space of trying to improve the relationship between law enforcement and the community, I really and truly appreciate what you're doing in your program, man. I really do. I really do. No fluff. I also wanted to add, so let's talk about some of the success that you have. I read that you are supported by both the National Fraternal Order of Police and the NAACP.
Yes.
Two groups that do not seemingly hang out together, right?
Definitely not historically. Definitely not
Definitely
historically.
How, Sway? How does that happen?
I mean, the truth of the matter is that when you prove that you're for everyone's success, then I think it works out. And that's the short story of it. That's what ended up happening.
That is awesome. I read that. I was like, what? How? That's awesome. And then I thought it was great because it shows that you're being supported by both sides. And it shows what you're doing focuses not just on the police and not just on the community, right? I say this a lot. There's no relationship on the planet that will succeed if both sides are not working it. And I think that applies both to how we improve the relationship between law enforcement and the community. What do you think?
I think there's three types of relationships. And when we think about this, it's so basic, but it's so complex. There's undeveloped relationships where nobody really benefits.
Right.
There's bad relationships where we don't benefit.
Right.
And then there's good relationships where both people benefit.
Right.
And if I'm working towards building good relationships, then I'm trying to fix the bad relationships and develop the ones that are undeveloped, right?
Right. Facts.
But if I'm doing the other part of it, then I'm messing things up. And so it's that simple and that complex. Is how do we build relationships during times of conflict and crisis? Because there's relationships we have before that conflict and crisis. And then there's relationships we're building during that conflict and crisis, right? And so it's two different ways to look at it. But that's kind of how it all starts.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. So Why'd You Stop Me has trained, like I said, 28,000 plus peace officers. It's in 150 agencies over 5 states. And 250,000, y'all, community members, okay? What's one moment recently that made you stop and think, you know what, this is working?
So I think that the moments that I have are moments of confirmation. And those moments of confirmation where it's telling me, hey, this is working, recently they're reconfirming some of the stories that I've heard from the past. And I'll tell you, there's one story that was from the past. The year was, I think, 2015. And I had walked into a high school. And I'm at the auditorium and I'm putting on this presentation for high schoolers and trying to keep their attention and keep them captivated and build these relationships.
Right.
And there is a young lady who was just not paying attention. And I can tell. And so I say, I'm going to take a chance here. I'm going to bring her up on stage. And I brought her up on the stage and we did this role reversal scenario where she became the police officer and she had to answer a couple of different questions and she got the power and she had to make these decisions. And this whole time I smelled marijuana on her. Okay. And I'm like, man, right? So I'm sitting there going, oh, golly, how are we going to get past this? Well, to make a very long story short, her name is Jasmine Simpson. And the reason I know her name is not because of that day. It's because a school resource officer named Officer Danny Haas, who still works for the police department as a recruiter, he gets a hold of me. And he doesn't know me too well, but he says, hey, I need to tell you something. I said, what? He said, I got to tell you in person. Now, that sounds kind of weird, right?
Right.
So I meet up with the guy, and he says, there was a young lady in the auditorium in your presentation, and her teacher contacted me. And after the presentation, I guess the class had gotten an assignment to write one page about the presentation. Okay. And she wrote like 12 lines. And the teacher handed me this paper and was like, I wasn't going to accept this paper from her until I read it. And you have to see this, Officer Haas. And that was the paper that he gave me. And the paper was actually, it contained a poem. Okay. And the top of the poem was titled, I Used to Hate You. Wow. And it's 12 different lines. I used to think that all you did was ruin people's lives and eat donuts. But the truth is, every day you risk your lives for ungrateful people who hate you and spit in your face when all you're trying to do is just trying to keep them safe. And the last line is, I used to hate you, but now I want to be just like you. Wow. And he said, I need to show this to you. And I needed you to see this. And it took me months to muster up the courage and desire to want to go meet this young lady again because my bias had triggered so bad during that presentation, right?
The way she presented to you at that time.
And I ended up meeting her. Her name's Jasmine Simpson. She's a thriving community member in the city of Long Beach. And she ended up working with the organization. She's doing great things. She has children now. She's a valuable member of a community. And it's really cool to be able to see how a conversation where we can help people understand the value of relationships and relationship building leads us to recognizing what our personal mission statement is, which leads us to figuring out what success means to us, which leads to us to helping other people improve their leadership capacity. Right? Yeah. And that's one of the stories that really sticks with me. But recently, the challenges that God's put in front of me have been interesting because inside of police training spaces, I meet the best police officers. I meet some average police officers. I meet some mediocre police officers, and I meet some cops that probably just shouldn't be doing the job. Yeah. And that's how any business is, from janitorial services to, being a doctor. And some of the tests that I've gotten from the very, very small minority in number of police officers has been challenging. I get people telling me I'm a sellout or I'm this or I'm that. And how do you deal with that?
We're going to talk about that. Okay. Because I know that because I work in policing, I know us. And there's definitely some kickback to change, right? Or resistance to change. And we're definitely going to talk about that for sure. I'm actually looking forward to that part. But I have to highlight that story. Like, that is amazing. That is absolutely amazing. And I'm going to probably say this a lot. You guys will bear with me. I'm going to say amazing a lot because what he's doing, I know is hard from personal experience. Right. And so the fact that she is now, or she was able to say, hey, I want to be you after I hated you. That's a lot. That's a lot. And so kudos to you for that. The name of your nonprofit, Why'd You Stop Me? Okay. How many times have we heard that while working? Why you stop me, man? Yeah. Right. Yeah. Tell me, how did that name happen?
All
how?
Right.
Where does that come from?
So the unfortunate fact is that this nonprofit grew out of failure, not out of success.
Okay.
And in growing out of failure, it was because as a young police officer, I was introduced to 5 field training officers.
Mm-hmm.
3 of those field training officers told me how to be an exemplary police officer. And 2 of them told me that there were small times in small places where I could operate in the gray area.
Mm-hmm.
And the gray area is not a safe place for me to be in. Now, we can argue what the gray area is, but my gray area, not a safe place for me to be in. Yeah.
Okay.
And when I went out there and did this police work, it led me down this path for a couple of years of me putting myself into internal affairs. And that's just a lack of better way of explaining that I was making poor decisions.
Yeah.
And I got into some serious force situations. I got into some other things that were going on. And ultimately, it led me into a classroom. Mm. So if we fast forward about 5 years into my career, in 2011, I was on a team of officers, and there was a allegation that was not able to be proven that maybe we were going to be ambushed and killed. Mm. And that's a pretty serious deal,
right,
in the inner city of Long Beach.
For sure.
Well, I got upset. And I told my team, hey, let's go find out who did it. Mm-hmm. But I didn't sound that way. I said, let's go get it.
You're right. I was about to say, right? Let's go. Let's ride.
Go, right? And I had already kind of recovered from my mediocre or poor policing decisions. Mm-hmm. But I like to call it relapsing. I like to actually admit to people that I have an addiction to being an a-hole.
Interesting. And you admit to that.
And I'm in recovery.
Okay. You know what? I like that.
And I know that I'm in recovery, and I know that I could relapse at any point. Yeah. But my recovery systems are so strong that I'm not going to now.
Love that.
And because I had gotten into that position where my misuse of power was something at a certain point in my life that felt good, mm-hmm. my relapse was something that I recognized and my bosses recognized real quickly. And so when I said, let's go get these guys, my boss took me off the streets for a little bit. And I got a call from the assistant principal at a high school in Long Beach who actually played football with me in college. And he said, hey, I want you to come speak to a group of kids. And me speaking to people, like in an unprovoked manner, wasn't my thing, right? Because that just wasn't my thing. It was just 2011. It really wasn't my thing. And so he said, come speak to him. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And he asked me, what are you doing right now? And I was sitting in this office by myself trying to figure out what to do because I wasn't really doing a ton of police work. And so I said, I guess I'm not doing anything. And he said, well, then why don't you find something to do and come speak to these kids? And so I got permission to go out there and put on a suit and go speak to a group of kids. And I walked into this classroom with 40 kids, and Why'd You Stop Me was created. But it was created because the name was created because I had interacted with one youth in that classroom. And when I spoke to that kid, so after speaking to these kids for about an hour, and the stuff that I spoke about was so all over the place that it doesn't really matter. Ultimately, it was how do I explain police procedure and how do I explain why I do what I do, right? Which is way different than what we do now. Right. But that was I'd only graduated to like second grade level of this at the time. Yeah. So at the end of about an hour of speaking to this group of kids, a kid stood up in the back of the room. He didn't raise his hand. He stood up. And in Long Beach, I had this nickname called Tiny. And
I don't know if you guys can see it in the camera, but there's nothing tiny about this man. So that's interesting.
Yeah. So he said, hey, Tiny, you remember me? And I said, no, I don't. And he said, 2 years ago, you arrested me with a gun in my waistband. And I asked the police question, which I think was important. I said, hey, bro, you don't have a gun on you right now, do you?
Right.
Let me feel it.
Right. Right.
Now, that definitely wasn't the point, but that was me reverting back to making sure I was safe. And he says, no, and that's not the point. And I said, okay. And he said, from that day at the age of 15 until today at the age of 17, when I woke up, every morning when my feet hit the floor, the first thing I thought about doing was hurting you. Oh. He said, but today is the first day that I could say, after having a conversation and after you being here, today's the first day I could say that I'll never hurt you. And this young leader actually took a couple steps into the aisle and said, nobody in here is going to hurt Tiny.
Right.
And he stood back and he said, but there's a couple things that I want to tell you about from that day. And I've actually been like waiting for this.
Wow.
He said, I was 15 years old. I was holding the hand of my first girlfriend, and he grabbed his shirt and he said, I was wearing clothes my mom bought me with her last money. And I was holding the hand of my first girlfriend on my first date, and it was raining outside, and it was across the street from the school, right across the street from Atlantic. And I remembered the contact because I remember getting a call of a person that was armed with a gun, which in law enforcement you call a 417 suspect,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And when we got this call, we rolled up, and we rolled as a group. I was on a gang and violent crime suppression team called
Right.
Directed Enforcement, and so we rolled up, and we get out of the car and we point guns at him.
Yeah.
And we made him let go of his girl's hand and got down on his hands and knees and crawled to us, which is the protocol at the time. And he said, you got out of the car and you pointed a whole bunch of guns at me. And I don't know if you know this, but it's real hard to pay attention looking down the barrel of a whole bunch of guns.
Right. Yeah.
And that's a realization that I hadn't had. As a matter of fact, it's probably a realization that most police officers today don't even think about.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said, and then you made me let go of my girl's hand. You made me crawl to you. He said, then you dropped your knee in my back, which back then was the way that we did things.
Right.
And then you handcuffed me. And he said, one of your homeboys swept me away. And he said, I haven't seen you since.
Wow.
And he said, my mom watched from across the street as the whole thing went down.
Mm.
And he said, there's 3 things I need you to know. And I'm going to tell you these 3 things. And then you can leave our classroom.
Then you can leave our classroom.
That's exactly what he said. And so I sat there and I listened. And he said, you know, number 1, I was raised never be disrespected in front of a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And he walked down the aisle and he got in that like uncomfortable area, like in the police academy,
Right.
there's like a zone where you like have to
Yeah.
maybe use force.
Yeah.
He got in that like
Sure.
uncomfortable zone.
Right.
And he said, I was raised never be disrespected in front of a woman. And he looked at me and goes, weren't you raised that way, Tiny?
Mm.
And he backs up and he says, number 2, my mother watched the whole thing go down. She was across the street. That was the woman that I felt disrespected in front of.
Mm-hmm.
A police officer went over my mom and there was a crack in the window and I could listen. And the police officer said to my mom, your son's going to jail for having a gun. He'll call you in a couple hours. Take care. And the police officer walked away.
Mm.
And I could hear through the window and I could see through the little grid thing in the cop car. I could hear my mom say, excuse me, officer. Excuse me, officer. And I saw the officer just stare my mom down like the piece of crap he thought she was, get in the car and drive away. And he walked up to me again the second time and got in that same space and said, my mom wanted to know more.
Right.
Wouldn't your mom want to know more, Tiny?
Wow. Huh.
And the third thing he said was, you know, my brother had just been shot right at the base of the apartment complex, right where we were 3 months before you saw me. My big brother had been shot and killed. My baby sister was in the house with my mother. And I don't know if you've met him, but I've never met my father. I was the man of the house. He walked down the aisle. He got in that same area. And he said, if all that happened to you, cop or not, in this neighborhood, wouldn't you be carrying a gun when you left the house, Tiny?
Yep.
He backs up and he says, Tiny, you got to think for us.
Mm.
And I'll never forget that statement. You got to think for us. And when you think for us, you're going to have a great program, but you can't stop doing what you're doing because I got your back for the rest of your life, and you need to know that. Don't stop it. I appreciate your time. You can go now. And he kicked me out of the classroom. I literally walked out of that classroom, and I had no clue what was going on. I just got punked by a 17-year-old. He schooled me like this dude gave me the business. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm looking at him going, oh, my gosh. And the assistant principal comes out.
Wow.
And he looks at me and he goes, that was great. I got pictures. We got this new website thing. I'm going to put it on the website. What's the name of your program? And I relapse.
Wow.
And let me tell you how I relapse. I relapsed with the name of the program. And I think most cops would think this name was appropriate. You ready for the name I had first?
What?
I was like, hey, let's call it Guns, Drugs, and Bad Guys.
Of course, cops would love that one.
And so he
of
goes,
course.
so you want me to put on the school website to the parents
Right.
that we brought in Guns, Drugs, and Bad Guys training?
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, that's not going to work.
That's not going on.
Right. We're learning. Yeah. So 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 I sit there and I'm like, you know what? And I got a hamster up here in his wheel, and he doesn't have all 4 legs sometimes, right? So he's just trying. But my hamster starts sprinting, and I said, they always want to know why they got stopped. So let's call it, why'd you stop me?
That's it.
And Why'd You Stop Me was born.
That's it. Dude,
So
there's so many gems in that story. And as you tell me that story, my thought, what I'm thinking is, what did you say in that classroom that gave him the courage, right, to approach you? It was respectful, but as he clicked you out of the classroom, he approached you with some authority.
Oh man,
right?
Wow. Yeah, it was scary.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Like in my skin, I was scared.
Yeah.
Like my partner was at a 45-degree angle to him,
Right.
right? Like this
you're
was
bladed, right?
We're bladed. We're sitting there, and
we call it an FI stance.
Yeah.
Right? That FI stance, right?
Yeah. It was interesting, but there was 2 things that were said, and they were said by me, and I actually shocked myself with my answers. Meaning I hadn't really verbalized them, but ultimately the discussion was, how can a white police officer be in a black neighborhood and help?
Yes, I think that's huge.
Right? That was the discussion.
Yeah.
And so there was 2 things that I've always known, and I didn't know exactly how to explain them, but I just bluntly said them. I said, hey, can we agree on 2? When that question was asked of me in that classroom, I said, can we agree on 2 things? Now, mind you, at this time, I think I said it aggressively in this classroom.
Okay.
I've gotten away. I've figured out how to soften it, but it worked at the time.
Okay.
I said, can we agree that nobody in this classroom when they were born chose the color of their skin?
Facts.
Everybody agreed.
Facts.
I said, can we also agree that when you decide not to like tomatoes, because I don't like tomatoes, you make a deliberate decision not to like tomatoes? And they're like, yeah? Well, it's the same thing for people's skin color.
Right.
If I decide not to like skin color, it's a deliberate decision, and I haven't made that decision.
Wow. And you gained their trust.
And that was it.
With that statement.
That was it. I said racism, bigotry, things like that. Those are learned behaviors that I would have to go and demonstrate, and I would have to act on that.
Right.
Now, the disconnect that we see with the police and the community, and we could talk about this if you want to go on down this road, is that right now that's very, very hard to believe on both sides. Yeah. It's hard to believe as a police officer that I can trust the community, which I have to. It's a relationship principle. Yeah. And it's hard to believe on the community side that I can trust a police officer. And that I can believe that they're for me, right? Because of a number of different factors. And so, obviously I understand the color of my skin, and I understand there's a lot that I will never understand, but I'm trying to seek to understand. And I think that's where the value is in relationship building. Yeah.
And as you bring up race, unfortunately it can be an issue. And obviously you guys have noticed I'm black, right?
No way.
And so, but I'm also a police officer. So I have this very unique perspective and opportunity, I even say, right, to understand and see both sides, right? I think your program is also so powerful because you are a white male. You're right? Because like you mentioned, it's hard for certain communities to trust white male police officers, particularly the black community, right? For all sorts of reasons, history, blah, 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 blah. We're not here for that part. But
we can be here for any part. We talk whatever you want. Let's go.
Well, listen, I think, and this is my opinion, some may disagree, but I think your program is so powerful. Because it's one thing for me as a black woman to talk about it, right? And I think it helps, right? I am able to maybe get a special type of connection with the black community because I'm black. But when it is a white male who is seemingly the enemy all the time, right, especially that wears the badge, it comes off, I think, makes them, maybe like the young man, makes them become more vulnerable, maybe, right?
Maybe.
But yeah, and I recently did a podcast. You mentioned something else. I recently did a podcast. Actually, one of the things I do is I go out into the street and I don't look like a cop. I try to look as regular as possible. And I just randomly interview people. I don't tell them what I do, and I ask them questions regarding law enforcement. So long story short, I was interviewing this older black gentleman, and he said something, and I'm saying because you mentioned it, there is a mutual distrust right now, a mutual distrust. And what do you think, as someone who's an expert in this area, building relationships, how do we fix? I asked him this question. He didn't have a full answer because I get it. That's a hard question to.
Very, very hard.
It's hard to have a solution to that.
Very hard. Yeah.
What do you think? How do we solve the mutual distrust that we have right now?
Well, I'll tell you that I believe I'm a spiritual guy,
Mhm.
and I believe that God puts conflict out there in general
Mhm.
to strengthen human beings.
Yeah.
And so
Growth.
I don't think there's going to be a fix, but
Yeah.
I think that in order for us to improve, and that Kaizen method of ongoing, small,
Constant,
iterative,
yes.
constant improvement, right? We call it
Yes.
2%. One of our slogans
Yes.
is 2% better every day,
Every
right?
day.
Is for us to recognize the principles of relationship building and utilize those principles. So
Yeah.
here's the one that I think we could do so much better at in law enforcement.
Yeah.
If I'm going to build a relationship with you,
Mhm.
and I get some of these principles from one of our partners, our company partners with a company called Echelon Front, which is run by one retired and one former Navy SEAL, Jocko Willink and Leif Babin.
Okay.
And conceptually working together, I now understand that if I'm going to build a relationship and I want to influence you, which is a big part of a relationship is influence.
Yeah.
If I want to influence you, I got to let you influence me first.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Okay.
if I want you to trust me, I got to trust you first.
Right.
And if I want you to listen to me,
Yeah.
I got to listen to you first. And if I want you to care for me, I got to care for you first.
Mhm.
And so within that system, that foundation, there's then 4 steps to a process that we built called procedural fairness.
Okay.
And that procedural fairness system is what we teach, but we don't teach it to the police or the community. We teach it to the police and the community.
Right.
So that you don't have a law enforcement training academy
Mhm.
or a community training academy or a public training academy. You have a community training academy. You have
Right.
everybody,
Right.
right? Separate
Right.
from firearms and defensive tactics, which, by the way, we could probably also teach the community, even though we don't need to. But without that, there shouldn't be very many differences in training, and people should be invited into the walls of what's going on.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, when we turn our walls to windows and create the
Right.
transparency the community expects, then we'll be able to build relationships better.
Yes.
And so this 4-part system is giving people a voice bigger than our own, as
Mhm.
long as safety is not jeopardized.
Right.
Treating people the way they want to be treated, even though we may not want to be treated that way.
Yep.
Which takes the golden rule and morphs it to a defensible system called the platinum rule.
Okay.
Because I was raised to treat people the way I want to be
Right.
treated.
For sure.
Right? But at the end of a 10-minute use of force, what would it look like if a attorney looks at me and says, "Hey, so you were raised to treat people the way you want to be treated, is that right?" Yes, sir.
Mhm.
So you were giving this guy, my client, commands for 10 minutes. Did you ever seek to understand my client in that 10 minutes?
Right. Did you listen to him?
Did
while
you
give him
listen to him?
commands?
Did you ask him anything? Did you
Mhm.
figure out anything about him?
Mhm.
Did you treat him the way he wanted to be treated? How do you know he wanted to be treated? Because you said you want to be treated a certain way. So here's the question for the jury, ladies and gentlemen. You treated my client the way you wanted to be treated, but how do you know he wanted to be treated like you? That's a problem. That's not a solution, right? And so if we're sitting there saying, "Hey, I'm giving you a voice. I'm giving you an opportunity to comply. I'm giving you that," that's still you're in my arena.
Mhm.
So how can we work together collectively for me to seek to understand what you need
Right.
while still staying
Right.
safe?
Right.
I'm not asking
Right.
you to jeopardize safety. As a matter of fact, unfortunately, in my attempt, if you come running at me and change the circumstances and dynamics,
Yeah.
and you come running at me with a knife or something,
Yeah.
I'm not going to try and disarm you using physical arm
No.
tactics, right?
Absolutely
I'm going to have
not.
to, unfortunately, use
force.
use the
Yeah.
minimal force necessary to affect and arrest and
Right.
overcome resistance. But that's the second pillar. The third pillar is having respect for somebody beyond their condition. When we meet somebody in law enforcement, okay, let me ask you a question. You ever been to Vegas?
Oh, of course.
Yeah? Okay. You ready for this? Tell
Yeah.
me the story.
The
No,
story-
there is no. You're not. You even had to like reconfirm the story.
Story.
No, you don't want to tell me the story. Why? Because what happened in Vegas, right, is something that was probably at your work. Yeah, we think it's stay. There's some things that don't. There's some things that don't. But we'll talk about that later. Ultimately, that's what we consider your Vegas moment.
Okay.
It's the moment that doesn't define you. But if the police officer encountered you at that moment, he would define you by that moment
Yes.
sometimes, depending on their level of emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have that emotional intelligence to start with. So when I see police officers don't have it, I'm like, hey,
Right.
they're acting in a professional way. but they're not right now. They may not be vulnerable enough to have a desire to serve.
Yes. Self-awareness.
Right. That
They don't have that
self-awareness. And so when it
self-awareness.
comes to
Yeah.
respect, we
Yeah.
tell police officers and community members in our trainings,
Mhm.
we say, hey, our procedural fairness system is about having respect beyond the condition. Because when I
like
meet
that.
you, if I meet you at Vegas at 2:30 a.m. outside of a nightclub, a lot of the times what I'm going to see, and this is what my bias says, it might not be Officer Jill, but
Right.
me, you lost a shoe, you lost your friends, you're drunk, you're high, and you don't like people right now.
Right.
And therefore, what happens? A cop shows up. And what's that cop going to
Last
judge you
person.
on, right? That
Mhm.
cop's going to judge you sometimes, every once in a blue moon, as what the culture has allowed us to judge people for, which is a tweaker, an a-hole, a
Mhm.
gang member, a
Mhm.
parolee.
Mhm.
And in our culture, we could afford to make those changes, and we have with a vast majority of law enforcement. But what does it take? It takes 1 out of 12 people to mess it up in
Yes.
any
Oh,
business.
God, yes.
And we call that the 1 in 12, 1 in 12 person, 1 in 12 moment. And that's part of our training tools.
Yeah.
So the first is voice, second is neutrality, third is respect,
Mhm.
and the fourth is trust.
Right.
And just like we had expected, just like we had asked that elderly gentleman, what does it take to build
Yeah.
trust? And he
Yeah.
says, no, there's distrust on both sides.
Right.
Well, if I tell you that I'm a trust builder,
Mhm.
the next thing you should ask me is, how do you build trust?
Right.
In most businesses, they're going to tell me they're trust builders. And in most businesses, when I say, how do you build trust? They're
They
going
don't
to
have
go,
an answer. Yeah, they don't have an answer.
No, because they've gotten
Don't
to the
have an
point
answer.
of checking a box.
Mm-hmm.
But we haven't gotten to the point beyond that.
Yeah.
Police officers take procedural justice training, right? Principled policing, all these different programs. And they're usually trained by somebody who trained them on how to train others, called the Train the Trainer program.
Right.
Well, if I didn't build the training, it's hard for me to own the product. It's hard for me to own the training. And so
Yeah.
now what happens? Now different aspects of the community say, hey, we did that training. But what's the community asking? Well, if you did that training, why did it look
Why
like
different?
that?
Yeah.
Why'd
Why
it
aren't
look
you
like-
acting it out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
training is only half of it. What
Yeah.
we provide is training and development.
Yeah.
Right.
I
And
like
so that 4-part system coupled with those relationship principles,
Yeah.
that's how we repair some of the
Yeah.
things that are going
Man,
on.
there's so many good nuggets in there. And when you say trust, immediately know what I think? Vulnerability.
That's it. It's like
Vulnerability.
if you were in a situation where you had just been emotionally scarred,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Can I be vulnerable to sit this close to you in my police uniform, or do I have
Yeah.
to stand over top of you?
Right.
Because if I sit in this police uniform, you might take out a hatchet and
Right.
kill me, like I saw on social media that happened 72 years ago that they're
Yeah.
now sharing to scare people.
Yeah.
Now there's an
Yeah.
aspect of safety.
Yeah.
But I gotta have enough trust as a police officer to trust you
Yeah.
enough to know that
Yeah.
right now you are in a position that I need to help you get out of.
Yes.
I need to help you accomplish the success that I want to see in both of us. And so I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna talk to you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna care for you.
Yeah. I think officers, we confuse that. You're right. Like we confuse vulnerability with, oh no, it's not safe.
Weakness, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm not safe or I'm not strong if I'm being vulnerable.
That's right.
And the key, and I read this actually in, and it's true when I read it in Brene Brown's book. She has an amazing book. I forgot the name of it. Anywho, vulnerability is the key to trust. It opens that door. It's the key, literally, to open the door to trust. And I think as officers, we probably need to, and as departments, right? We need to train more or add another aspect of that to our training.
Yeah.
Right, we train so much in tactical training, which we need to.
Sure.
Our job is hard.
Sure.
It's dangerous. I'm not saying let's not train in the area of tactics. Let's just add that extra element of emotional intelligence, which thrives in vulnerability. Right, self-awareness, emotional regulation, right, stress management, all those areas. And listen, since we're talking about the police, let's talk about.
We're talking about the
folks.
police? No way. Okay, sorry. Let me get back to. I thought we were just having a conversation. I thought the police just happened to be a part of it, but I guess if we're talking about it, let's talk about it.
Let's talk about our peeps that we love, and I'm sure you will agree with me. Majority of officers across the world across our country, I can speak for other countries, come on the job for the right reasons. Are there people who slip in there for the wrong reason? Absolutely, and that occurs in every single profession in the world. But and I know you know this phrase, there's nothing that officers hate more than change or the only thing that officers dislike the same as change is the way things are.
Mhm.
And I've heard that said. I'm sure you've probably said that before as well.
That was very well done.
Yeah.
I do agree.
Let me ask you this. how did your peers, right?
Yeah.
Police officers, how did they respond to this type of training or this type of challenge of the training, right?
Well, let's talk about my city, right? So the city that I served for almost 20 years, let's say there's 1,000 officers in that beautiful city. I like to break it into thirds.
Okay.
And this is at home. This is not the same as training away, right? You cannot be a prophet in your own town. It's just hard, your own city.
Yeah.
So it's hard to be able to come in and do that, right? So in my own area, and I think it's important to know this because somebody's going to reach out to a cop after they hear this and they're going to say, hey, you know that Jason Lehman guy?
Right.
And they're going to go, oh, that guy, that sellout guy? So let me tell you,
Sellout,
let me tell you
Yeah,
about
for
this,
sure.
right? So because I used to do things wrong, people can't see me do things right sometimes.
Right. Yeah.
And I've harmed people I've worked with.
Yeah.
I've wronged them.
Mm.
So I have to have some leniency for that. But in order for me to continue to thrive, I got to forgive myself.
Right. For sure.
Right. And
Absolutely.
so I would say a third of the officers in my agency probably would not pee on me if I was on fire.
Really? Okay.
Another third of the officers in my agency probably think I'm doing some decent work. They don't have anything good or bad to say. And then there's another third of the officers that love what I do.
Yeah.
That support me,
Yeah.
that have nothing but good things to say about I just had somebody that was working to promote to lieutenant in my agency. And she reached out to me and she said, the first person I want to speak to help me promote is you.
Wow. Okay.
Because you know what the community expects and you know how to help me articulate what I already do. Because I'm doing what you're teaching, but I just want to know a little bit more about how to articulate.
Yeah. Right.
Now, when it comes to the officers that I've never met before, that's a different story. And it's a different story for everyone. It's like coming in with a message and you have a clean slate.
Yeah.
It's actually easier that way, right?
Right.
It's easier because I don't have to rebuild relationships.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when I come in, I speak to officers at 7 a.m. when our trainings usually start. 7, not 8,
Ooh.
7 a.m.
That's an early training. I'm not
7
gonna
a.m.
lie.
You have to wake up.
I'm side-eyeing you. If I'm there at 7
Yeah,
a.m.,
oh
bro,
yeah.
I'm
So
like-
you're getting there, your arms are crossed, right? You're sitting there.
Mad that you're there.
Yeah, you're mad at everything, right? Think about this. The opportunity to wake up before the proverbial enemy, which is usually ourselves.
Right.
The opportunity to wake up early, go and sit in the class and get paid lots of money to not get hurt, to learn how to become 2% better, to improve our familial relationships, to improve the communication between our bosses and our subordinate leaders and our friends. Why would I be happy about that? Like, why would that be exciting? Do that for free? Like, why?
Right.
And get paid? Like,
Right.
why would I? Right?
Right.
But because of the culture that we have and the fact that we don't like change and we don't like the way it is sometimes is something that's hard. And so ultimately in the first few hours, it's hard. People get a hold of me like, hey, we can have a regional training, Jason, and we can invite everyone. And I said, that's awesome. You know how many people will be there? They're like, how many? Not many. Because if they don't know me personally, they're not coming.
Yeah. They're not signing up for it.
That's right.
They're being voluntold.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. Because what we do as leaders is we put people in uncomfortable positions so they can develop.
Yeah.
And so when I speak to agencies, they think that people are just going to want to come over to us because they've heard me.
Right.
If you've heard me, you'll come back. Most of the time you'll come back. In the most humble way, God's given me a position and an assignment to help people develop. And once people figure out I can help them develop, they'll come back. Right. But until then, they're like, oh, the why'd you stop me training? And then we call it community policing or community engagement to embrace conflict.
They're already checked out.
Come on, like it is a wrap, right? So what do we
Right.
have to name it? Like, right? I want to name it like your automatic rifle fire.
Right. Oh, everyone's
Right? Like
there.
it's okay. But
Everyone's
and not
there.
because they want to shoot rifles, but because conceptually it's like clandestine meth lab development, right? Like that's
more appealing
That's the deal. Yeah,
to
that's
the culture,
deal.
right?
So, but we break people down. And then after, just like how I was broken down by a discussion I had with a very, very high ranking official. And he ultimately said, hey, the respect I have for you has diminished so bad that if you ever have to respond to my house to help my teenage daughter, I want you to turn the car around and go the other way.
Wow.
Don't go near my
Really?
daughter. And that's when I was doing police work in a very mediocre fashion. I used to say I was the guy, and you're gonna know this guy when I say it. I was the guy that would go to the union and say, 9 out of 100 times I'm doing it right.
You
And
were the
all
guy that I
all
would say,
they're doing-
you making it bad for us.
That's right. Ultimately, I was the
Yeah.
guy that I could tell you now. I was the guy to let you down.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm one of the cogs in this puzzle that is making the distrust in the police happen.
Yeah.
And now the only thing I can do is go back and try and fix some of it. That's
Right.
all I can do
Right.
is try and repay
Right.
the debt to
Mhm.
to human beings,
Mhm.
both outside of uniform and in uniform.
Yeah.
And so now, how do you make that change?
Yeah.
And making the changes to show people within the first few minutes of being in a classroom
Mhm.
setting, community or police, that I'm for you.
Right.
And
Right.
that's the big thing. Somebody says, how do I respond? We ask them to develop questions. What do you want to learn today? And one of the questions we get often is, how do I respond to a person of color
Mhm.
who looks at me and says, you're stopping me because
I'm black.
I'm
I'll
black,
say it.
Hispanic, whatever it might be,
Yeah.
right? And you know what the best answer is for that? Let me ask you, what do you say? Let's say
What
you
do I say?
Let's say, hey, you know what? You got this black and blue dynamic,
Right.
and you're a sellout, and you're this and you're that,
Mhm.
and they look at you. What do you say other than, have you looked at me? I'm black. What
Right.
else do you say?
Well, that's the first thought.
Sure,
Honestly,
sure.
the first thought is, I am black.
Sure, but that's
Right?
not
I don't
gonna
say
work.
that. It
Yeah,
doesn't work because they're
yeah.
like, they don't care. They can care less.
That's right.
Right. So me personally,
Yeah.
I explained to them the real reason why I stopped them.
Yeah.
Right. At least
What
for
is
me.
the real? Okay, so let's say they ran
Whatever
a stop
the-
sign. What is the real reason you stopped?
I stopped them because they ran a stop sign.
You think that's the real reason?
In that moment, yeah, I believe it.
I would like
believe
I would
it.
like to offer you a different perspective.
Okay.
Will you take it?
If
Give
if
it a
it's correct.
Okay, cool. Let me see if I can help you. You tell
Okay.
me if this is true.
Okay.
You didn't stop somebody for being black. You stopped them because you're for them.
Because I'm for them.
You
Okay.
tried to stop
Elaborate.
them. You tried to stop them from getting into an accident. You
True.
tried to stop
Yeah.
them from hurting a
Yeah.
child down the street. You
Right.
tried to stop them from their own decisions.
Right. Yeah.
And their own decisions aren't even decisions that they made. They're decisions you perceived, and those decisions could be completely misperceived by you.
Someone's hurt in the car. They got somewhere to go.
But not only
right?
that,
An emergency.
Not only that, you could be wrong. They're not guilty because you stopped somebody. You could be completely wrong. My perception could be wrong.
Yeah.
But my perception was not the color of your skin.
Right.
My perception was I wanted to help you.
Okay. I like that.
And I worked on a stat unit getting unit, right?
Right.
Like literally chasing guns, drugs, and people that are making bad decisions. That's what I did. I did it for years, right? Executing high risk search warrants, banging down
Yeah.
people's doors, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And when I realized that I was doing all that because I was for those folks, then when I dropped them off at jail, what'd they say to me? They said it to you. They
Thanks.
said, thank you.
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the coolest things you can get
That's
as an
it.
officer when they tell you thank you for arresting them.
But
Oh my
why-
gosh.
But why are they saying thank you?
Yeah. Well, I think one, there's reasons why you treated them with dignity and respect.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, right? And maybe that's what it is too. You're protecting them.
You're for them.
You're for them. Yeah, there you go. That's the word you use. For
You're
them.
For them.
Yeah.
That's exactly when somebody knows you're for them,
Yeah.
the relationship's usually good.
Yeah. That's
Think
true.
right. Think about the women in my life that I may or may not have cheated on when I was not doing the right things, or the friends I've wronged, or the business part of it, right? Whatever it is.
Yeah.
The second you know I'm not for you, it's over.
Yeah. Right. Oh heck yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's it. And so when I watched members of the Long Beach gang unit doing a traffic stop in ways that I had explained it, doing a high risk stop, and instead of saying, get your hands up, get down on your knees, they say, get your hands up. And once they see your hands, they then verbalize, we're here our goal is not to use force.
Right.
We're going to answer your questions. What we need you to do is follow our instructions. How much extra did that take?
Yeah. No, that's
To
true.
tell somebody that in a calm voice, just say, hey man, right? Because think about how bad your chest is pumping out, your heart's pumping out of your
For
chest.
sure.
Do we have time to say that? If time allows,
Right.
can we show you we're for
Yeah.
you? If time doesn't allow, then our whole 4-step system, which we call the table of fairness, 4 legs to a table, right?
Right.
That 4-step system, we're going to have to interrupt for a second. We're going to get right back into it.
Yeah.
We're going to get right back into
Yeah.
it. So we have to interrupt it to go hands-on or something.
Yeah.
We're still using those, but we're using them differently. So
Yeah.
we're still using voice and neutrality
Yeah.
and respect and trust. But that's what I think it is. I
Yeah.
think we do things because we're for people.
Yeah.
I just don't think we know how to
I like
explain
that.
that.
Yeah, that's true.
And not
I
only
like
that, once somebody says something that triggers one of our 9 indicators of rage, like, you just stopped me because I'm black. And I'm like, oh, not the 12th time today.
Yeah.
Like, dear God, give me the power to not, right? Because then we get compassion fatigue. Now, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
right?
no, that's true. And you get triggered.
And now you're sitting there going,
triggered.
oh man, this is the end of the world. I
Again?
got triggered yesterday at
Yeah.
the car dealership. I'm buying a car. I knew it was this guy's Friday. He comes out and he says, hey, here's the cost. And I'm like, okay, but I had asked for something else. He goes, let me tell you what you're not going to get. And I said, oh, God. Dear
wow.
Lord, give me the power
Right,
to just be
right,
okay here,
right.
right? And so I had to use my own skill
Yeah.
set. And these skill
Emotional
sets work.
intelligence, man.
The
Emotional
EQ,
intelligence. Yep.
these skill sets
Yep.
work no matter what arena we're in.
Yeah.
MMA fighting,
Yep. Yep.
policing, what I like to call protecting.
Yeah.
You know, there's the community's upset because we do cops on dots policing, where we put
Okay.
more cops in areas where more crime is, right?
Yeah.
Which leads
sure.
to more arrests, which leads to us finding more crime,
Right.
right? And then they upset.
Why they're
and
upset about that?
and
We're
there's a-
protecting your community.
There's
is
a big
beyond
dynamic.
me.
You want to
but
know why?
Hmm.
Because we're not calling it proactive protecting.
Just change the wording.
No, it's not the wording. It's not. See, the wording isn't the change. It's the feeling behind what we're actually doing. See, when we change the wording, we're lying.
Huh.
But when we change the feeling behind what we're doing, we go out and do it differently. We can still
Okay.
make the arrest, but on every contact where there's not an arrest and every contact where there is an arrest, are we building trust? Are
Right.
we seeking to understand? Are we doing those things? And we are, but we
Mhm.
struggle to explain it.
Yes.
The wording helps us to recognize what we can explain.
Okay.
So by
Okay,
changing
okay.
the wording, we're able to do that. So I know we went down a little bit of a
No,
tangent, but
you're good.
all right, cool.
That's a loaded area, right?
Yeah.
It's a loaded area, especially when we're dealing with our folks. As far as when I say our folks, policing, right?
But when you say our folks, I get confused because I
I
look
know.
at you and my bias triggers, and I'm like, okay, are we talking about people of color?
I'll
Are we
say
talking about
policing.
cops? You know,
We'll
like,
say policing.
no, I mean, because our folks to me is everybody. Like,
You're right.
everybody's
You're right.
our
I
folks.
shouldn't
So,
say that.
that's
I will
okay.
correct
That's all right.
myself. I misspoke.
You're good.
See that vulnerability?
I
I can
like
admit
that.
when I'm wrong, man.
I like that. We call that extreme ownership.
There you go.
There you
I
go.
like that.
Yeah.
I like
Great
that.
book for anybody that wants a leadership book.
There you
Yeah.
go. So as we talk about police officers and how there's challenges in introducing this type of mindset, has there ever been a time where you were trying to present this to police and you thought, man, this is not going to work?
Yeah.
There been a time that you wanted to give up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Want me to tell you about it? Or you want me to say, yeah, and be
Sure.
quiet, like that short answer?
I think
Because that'd be kind of cool. Like, yep.
That's it.
That's
Say
the
less.
difference between instruction and facilitation, right? Like you're trying to facilitate. I'm like, yes.
Yes, I have.
You're like, tell me
Next.
more. No.
I really want to hear
Yeah,
now
all
since
right,
I
all
feel
right.
like it's a little
No,
dicey, no?
I think
Or what do you
that
think?
it is dicey.
Okay.
I think that when you're helping people improve, you have to take risks.
Mm-hmm.
And when you take those risks to help people improve,
Mhm.
you're going to win some and you're going to lose some. But you're only winning and losing battles. The war, you can win every time.
Hmm.
You just
Okay.
have to recognize how it is that you can communicate with somebody to allow their reality to make sense first.
Okay.
And I'm actually going to explain this to you
Okay.
backwards.
Okay.
How did I learn this?
Okay.
I learned this from a community member.
Okay.
So I already knew this, but I didn't know exactly how to explain it. And let's fast forward. So Why'd You Stop Me starts as a concept in 2011. Then it turns into a picture book. I don't know how, but I decided I was going to start doing this. So I took pictures of gang members and their tattoos, and I went to the community and I said, do you know how much these tattoos scare us? Like, what? And then I started saying, okay, from these tattoos scaring us, this is why we act this way.
Yeah.
Well, so then I had to morph from there, right? So I started morphing from there and said, okay, let's figure this out. Let's look at this curriculum. Let's build this dynamic. In 2015, I'm only training community members. I didn't start training a cop until 2016, which I can
Okay.
answer next. But in 2015, I'm going across the school campus doing this Why'd You Stop Me stuff. I'm Officer Tiny,
Mhm.
this good guy, and now I've found, once you find ethical policing, so this is, okay, dear unethical police officer, if you're out there, very few, but if you are, when you're doing everything right, it's real hard to do things wrong. So if there's any story for you, that's what I had to figure out. Now, I don't do everything right. So there's still a chance I'm going to do something wrong.
Yeah.
But when you are trying to do that, it's crazy, right? And that's like a biblical concept. It's
Yeah.
incredible to think about that. So I am walking across campus at Long Beach Jordan High School,
Okay.
pretty close to the Compton border,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
And Paramount Compton. So I'm up there and I'm bebopping across campus. And in this neighborhood, it's predominantly blacks and Hispanics. And
Yeah.
I'm walking across and I'm in my uniform. And this kid looks at me and he says, "Hey, pig, keep pushing." And he starts cussing like expletives, right?
Okay.
Yeah. And so I'm sitting there and I trigger in myself because I recognize what it triggers. It triggers somebody that's inside my body. I'm gonna tell you a little bit about my guy inside my body, Joe, because I know that you want to know. So
Tell me
I got
about the
this
guy.
I got this little guy inside my body, and right now, right this second, he is wearing a tank top that he calls a wife beater. He has tattoos all over his face. He's dripping in sweat. He's behind gray bars, and he is doing like prison burpees.
Okay.
He's sweating. He's my inner idiot.
Wow. Okay. Your inner idiot.
This guy triggers my inner idiot. And my
Okay.
inner idiot, what's he want to do? He wants to erupt, right?
Yes.
Relationship building is about suppressing your inner idiot.
Okay.
So now I got to suppress my inner idiot. I tell him, you stay down here. I've already met you. I'm going to win this fight. I push him down, right? Now, I don't say all that. I'm not like crazy. Like,
right.
okay.
Thinking.
But
Yeah.
I'm thinking. And I walk over to him and not like no microaggressions, no upset, no none of that stuff that you see when the guys are like real worked up, right? You seen that guy on scene work?
Yes.
None of that.
Absolutely.
Just cool, calm, and
Oh,
collected.
gosh, yes.
6'4" and like close to 300 pounds. And I walk over there and I look at him and I say, man, my name is Jason and I can see that you're upset. Is it that you don't like the cops or you don't like me?
Right.
And you ever look at somebody you could tell he just pee-peed on himself? That dude was like,
what
like
do you
he
mean?
was looking for
Yeah,
conflict.
He
right?
was expecting you to show up.
Right. And I truly believe there's
Aggressive.
I truly believe there's no bad kids. I believe there's kids that have been influenced in bad ways. I believe there's bad adults, but there's no, in my mind, there's no bad kids, just my world, and my belief. And he looks at me and he goes, just like this, I guess I don't like the cops. And I said, you know what I could say? Because where I work in Long Beach, there's 1,000 of us, right? I don't like some of them either.
Right.
I said, my name is Jason. I'm one of the good ones. And I put my hand out and he shakes my hand.
Yes.
Well, I look over and there is a mother, a African-American mother videotaping me. And this was 2014, end of 2014, beginning of 2015. I don't know if you guys know, but in 2014, in August of 2014, there was this major conflict that reignited some of the Rodney King beliefs, which happened in Ferguson, Missouri. Yeah. And Darren Wilson and Michael Brown got into a conflict, and there's a lot more to it. But ultimately, the hands up, don't shoot movement started out of that. And so, which we in law enforcement know wasn't exactly how it went down, but that's not how we look at things when in this story. So I walk over to the lady and I see she's videotaping. And I never liked video cameras as a cop. Like before the body cam, ooh, you pull a video camera out, my feelings got hurt.
Right.
Like, it was not good, right? Like, don't videotape me,
it's
right?
A trigger.
Yeah,
it's a trigger for officers.
But you guess what?
It can be
But it doesn't have to be anymore because I'm about to give the officers the best thought process ever. You ready?
Go for it.
If they're holding their cell phone, they can't access a weapon.
It's true. You know where their hands are. And we're taught hands kill.
That's it.
Right?
And the most expensive thing most people that are videotaping have is their cell phone.
It's true.
So what are they going to do? Throw it at you?
Right. At least they'll give you a second if they
That
pull for the gun.
person's got your back.
Now you can.
They're there for community safety. So if they're there for community safety, I just want you to stay right over here. Like just stay right.
And low key, it is safety also because they're recording. Not every officer, likes the body cam. Me personally, I like it because I have personally experienced the benefits of it. I have had multiple complaints of people saying that I did things that I didn't do. And it was that body camera that proved the exact opposite.
That's right.
The exact opposite.
Right.
Sorry, I'm going to cut you off, but I understand.
Here's what happened with this lady. She was a mother on campus. And I walk over to her. And I said, I saw you were recording. Yeah. Now, again, I've subordinated my ego, my inner idiot, right? Emotional intelligence is thriving. I know she's upset. I know she was concerned. And so I said, I saw you were videotaping. And she said, yeah. And I said, could I ask you why? Yeah. And she did what I was talking about, me learning from somebody. She taught me something. She said just like this. She said, man, officer, I saw that young man disrespect you. And I said, yeah. And I saw him use profane language towards a public servant. And I was like, yeah. Right now, I'm getting boosted. Right. My inner idiot's about to jump out. I'm
Ego is
right?
just
like,
flying,
this is just
right?
Like, woo, right?
Right.
And she said, and I thought that was a problem. And I said, well, thank you. Yeah. She said, but there was another problem. I said, what? When I saw you experience that, and then I saw you walk over to that young man, I was scared there was going to be another dead black man at the hand of a white police officer. Yep. And it was at that time that I thought to myself, wow. Yeah. She, with her words, she let me influence her first. Her words were, I'm on your team. I saw the conflict. I saw the disdain. If I was in your position, that would be bad. Right. But I'm not in your position. I'm a protector of young men of color. Right. and I felt like bad
Yeah.
things were going to happen. So I video recorded. And the
Right.
cool part about that, well, there was a lot of cool parts about it. And I like to focus on the positive, but the
Mm-hmm.
really cool part is we were able to take a still photo from that video of me and the young man shaking hands,
Yeah.
and we use that during training.
That's
and we tell
awesome,
that
man.
story.
That's proof.
Right? Well, there's proof. Yeah,
That's proof.
God's put me in a position to have a
Yeah.
lot of proof for the stories that I tell.
Yeah.
And that's what police officers that are
experience.
based on
Mhm.
what's objectively reasonable and what's
Mhm.
objective. And man,
Mhm.
the word objective is used so many times. I don't know. I mean, I don't know why objective isn't in every cop's wedding vows. I objectively agree to love my wife, and objective is like, it's so, but
Yeah.
it's true. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
you got proof. So that's what ended up happening for me was, I don't remember the original question, but that you had asked me. But what was the original question? I think
You made me forget.
yeah. I think ultimately it's how do
No.
we make that change? Like, how do we
Yes.
influence?
Yes.
And that's what ended up happening was I saw value in looking for the other side and making their
Yeah.
reality real.
Yeah.
After the George Floyd incident, the
Yeah.
George Floyd murder, after we look at that incident, when I'm drawing a blank.
Ferguson?
No. When
Which
we're back
one?
to George Floyd. When
Yeah.
Chauvin, thank you. When Derek Chauvin made the decision to do what was argued was in policy,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of police officers have a tendency to want to argue that.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, what part of care and concern is staying on top of a person that's dead without air for more than 7 minutes?
Yeah.
Even if it is within
Yeah.
policy, like
Yeah.
where's that okay?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so when we explain these things, what I did after that was something I would have never have done in 2005, 2006 when I got
Mhm.
started. I drove around and I policed in an area at that time that was predominantly men and women of color.
Mm-hmm.
And I got out of the car and I said, hey, my name is Jason. I introduced myself. I said, what are you thinking when you see me right now?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And how does that make you feel?
Yeah.
And you know what else I said? And it was really weird because I represent a group, and that group involved a guy named Derek Chauvin. So I
Yeah.
look at him and I say, I'm wholeheartedly sorry.
Yeah.
I'm very sorry. Well, I think when I can make somebody else's reality real and then I can work from there, it's a lot better than discounting their reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's a lot better than that. So that's what I found is important. It's just, how can I make somebody else right?
Right.
So I'm going to fight and listen to you. I'm going to be like, how do I make her right? How do I make her right?
Mhm.
How do I make her right? How do I
Mhm.
make her right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I did it on the smallest scale here with Solomon. Solomon said, hey, the bathroom key's over there. And I was like, okay, well, I don't know where over there is. Right. And so I walk over there and he's like, right there. And I'm like, okay, so I'm still walking. He's like, right there on the wall. I was like, oh, okay, God, like, right. But I had to make him right because I was like, yo, when he first articulated that was not clear to me.
Right.
But how do I make him right? And so I found the bathroom key and I went to the restroom. Right. But that approach is something that I try and live all the
Yeah.
time. And
Yeah.
I struggle with it.
Yeah.
I'm not.
You're
like,
right.
There's nowhere
But
close
that's
to
'cause you're
perfection.
human, man. You're
But
human.
that's how it works.
Yeah. You're human. And listen, as you say that, I want to just kind of touch on this briefly. I speak a lot about wellness, officer wellness. I believe that the lack of focus that departments have on wellness and resources available to officers across the country is one of the contributing factors as to why officers may struggle with these type of things, with emotional intelligence and controlling their emotions and, you know, self-regulation, self-awareness, all those things.
Mhm.
Can you speak to how, if you did, how did you ensure your wellness during your time of being a police officer? If not, what do you wish you would have done?
Yeah. I didn't ensure my wellness as a police officer. As a matter of fact, to fast forward, and there was a long process to get there. In 2010, I was doing what I believe was ethical, great police work. It was 2009, February 14th of 2009. I had an aha moment when I got suspended from the job.
Okay.
And in 2010, I was doing great work. As a matter of fact, it sounds weird, but the woman I was with when I was doing all these bad things, she didn't stay with me. That's weird, huh?
How dare
Like that-
she?
I know, right? Like
How dare
that's,
she leave you
you're
high
sitting
and
there
dry?
like, come on, right? And so she left, but I got to own this big house in Huntington Beach, this 4-bedroom house. So now I'm doing great police work, and I'm getting felonies at work still, right? And I like to explain this for the cops to recognize this because they're going to get it right when I say it. I go to the bar as a single person, and I'm getting felonies at the bar.
Okay.
So back then, in that part of my life, I'm out there and I'm closing deals everywhere. Like, this is great. I'm
Right.
feeling good. I'm feeling
Right.
great. And then I go home and I sit on my couch in my lonely home, and On about 12 occasions, I planned and plotted how I'm gonna kill myself.
Really?
And I'm sitting next to a loaded Glock 19, and there's the only safety in that gun is in the trigger. And I built up to this, but I realized that I was the anchor that was holding people from moving forward, and my friends and my family. And since the academy, I had lost my good friends, and my family started thinking differently of me, and I was blaming myself for my relationship, which was my fault, and all these other things. And it was all the past. And the moral injury that I had done to myself because it was shown to me to be okay on just a few times, and I had taken that and run with it. It had filled helium, this proverbial helium, up in the balloon in my head, and it felt like my head was going to pop. And I sat there and I said, hey, I'm going to make it all go away, but I'm going to make it go away because I don't want to keep on hindering other people. And I thought that if I just pulled the trigger, that it would cut the rope to the anchor and the boat would be able to set sail. And on the 12th occasion, or somewhere thereabouts, my phone rang, and it was my father. And my father in December will turn 89 years old. He's still with us.
That's awesome.
But my father has never said I love you to me that I can remember. And he said something that was a cool line, and he didn't know that at the time that I'd answered the phone, that I could barely hold the phone to my cheek because it was so wet that I couldn't even control the phone, and my shaking and everything else, and my eyes were completely welled up. And I was trying to get the snot to not be able to show my dad that I was in a bad state. And he said, I got to tell you, I just heard this. And I said, what? It's a really cool line. I said, what is it? He said, Jay, this world would never be the same without you in it. And for some reason, I felt like that was my dad saying, I love you to me. And it was at that time that I pulled out the little white insurance card, and I flipped it over, and I called member services, and the card said PPO. So for all you cops out there, PPO, let's go that route. The HMO thing, that's not the play. And for any HMOs that get upset, that's the way it goes. So I went the PPO route, and I called and asked to speak to a therapist, and I spoke to a therapist that lacked cultural competency, and she didn't know what to do. And ultimately, I found the right place and the right avenue, and I took some time off. And you know what's funny, Jill? It wasn't until 2018 that my agency found out that I was hurting.
4 years later, because he said
8 years later. This is 2010.
Oh wow! Okay.
I was brave enough to stand on stage and speak about it.
And say it, yeah.
And so ultimately, that's what ended up happening was I ended up getting well. And so I had to become well, but I had to become well. And I thought that it was for the big things. It wasn't for the big things. It was for the little things. It was the little things that that happened to me where I looked over at somebody and said, oh, you're upset that your son's going to jail. And a dad would say, yes, I am. But he was cussing at me because he was in his Vegas moment. And I got enraged and my feelings got hurt. And what happens when you can't control your feelings and you look like me? You get upset. Right. So I looked at him and I said, well, your son's not doing the right things. You want to know why he's not doing the right things? Because you're an idiot and you raised him. And I'd walk away. Now, at that time, let's fast forward to 2025 policing. My body camera's off at that time.
Right.
The policy says I can turn my body camera off at the end of the call. Well, this guy comes running up to me and I'm having a discussion. I don't have to turn the body camera on. It's free game, right? So what am I going to say? Now, the equivalent still, unfortunately, the equivalent still happens in policing today. It still happens where I can look at you and my microaggressions can take over and I can say, see you next time.
Right.
It's not happening on a regular basis. Like the community sometimes may think, aspects of the community may think that happens on every call.
No.
It's not the way it goes. But there are 1 in 12, 1 in 100, 1 in 1,000 moments where these things are happening. And it hurts the community, but it also hurts the officer.
Right.
I was hurting myself and I didn't realize it. And I didn't realize how to forgive myself for those small little things. And so it led me right onto that couch where I had to recognize something. And what I recognized was crazy. I recognized that I definitely didn't want to be alive. but I wasn't going to let myself get dead.
Listen, I'm glad you didn't get
And
dead,
so
Jason.
me too. And so
I'm
that's
glad.
that's ultimately what ended up happening was I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to figure out how to not only explain and create this strategic communication system, but also how do we help improve the culture of wellness? And as an individual leader, if I'm training chiefs and I go and I speak at police chiefs conferences all over the country, right? I've had an opportunity to speak to 15 different police chiefs, 15 state police chiefs conferences, right? And I go out there and I speak to them, and I'm speaking about a culture of wellness there. When I speak to an individual rank and file officer, it's a very similar idea, except their sphere of influence is smaller. And so what's that sphere of influence look like when I could take on a culture of wellness myself?
Right.
I could take on a culture of wellness by walking in here and meeting Solomon and meeting Jill. And when I leave, knowing that I have two good relationships.
Right.
Like right now, I'm looking over at Solomon. I'm looking over at Jill, and I'm like, "Hey, when I leave here, they're not gonna be. We're gonna be cool.
We good.
Like if I fall down under my brand new car, they're gonna come help. Like that's the way. I even offered them a ride. I said they can drive it around the block. That's exactly what I said. And I meant it. Like if you guys are like, "Hey, let's get in the car," I'd get in the car. Now I wouldn't give that to everybody, but I looked at you guys and I was like, "Okay, I think they both know how to drive."
Right.
And so that's what was really important. And I think that's when it comes to wellness. I think one missing piece is I don't think agencies need resources. Phone numbers, who to call, peer counselors. I think they need a culture that allows it to be okay to call those numbers.
To normalize seeking help.
That's right. That's right.
Yes.
Because you can't do anything. Anything worthwhile you can't do alone.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? And even just in our job alone, right? We learn as police officers, we don't go by ourselves.
So call for backup. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. You searching a room.
Here's a secret: LAPD can't chase by themselves. Right, that's a secret for everybody who wants to know. Yeah, it's out of policy, so run from them. Run them.
Yes.
He gave away a secret.
I didn't, y'all. He did.
But it's funny because that somebody.
No, it's true.
Somebody will be like, "Oh my gosh, he just gave away a hidden secret."
I know.
It's not a hidden secret.
Not
run
really.
From the cops.
Right. And even for us, our department, like we don't do one-man cars. I don't know. Some agencies do. I don't know why they still do it. It's so not safe. My opinion.
I'll tell you a secret. The majority of agencies do. Like 96% of California agencies.
That's crazy.
Did you hear what I just said?
Wild,
96% of California
agencies.
That's
wild to me.
You're one of a very rare group.
I know.
That has 2 officer cars.
But the idea that we are encouraged to do things as safe. A group. It's a safer way to do it.
Different way.
Right?
Yes,
Well, yeah.
For you, it's safe because that's how you were brought up in your culture.
That is true.
Yeah.
But I guess the overall idea is that why are we not normalizing it? And we need to normalize it. And unfortunately, that's the culture of policing where getting help is considered weakness. Right? There's a stigma of if you ask for help, they're going to take your gun from you. Right? Yeah. You're going to be put on the desk and you can't work anymore. Yeah. Right. I teach a class at work where we talk about these things.
Oh, cool.
And
what's the name? Is there a name of the class?
Yes, it's not. It wasn't developed by our department. It's actually developed by Georgetown University.
Oh, okay, cool.
And it's called ABLE.
Yeah, active bystander for law enforcement.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah. And so in those classrooms, it's actually amazing to teach because
I'm an able instructor.
Are you? Oh, awesome. See, it makes sense. That's why we gel, dude. That's why we gel. Yeah. But in those classrooms, I love to see how officers are able to be vulnerable and talk about these things, right? And I think we need to do that more, right? And so I like to speak about wellness because it's something we don't talk about.
I think
I want to talk about it as much as I possibly
really,
can.
really important. I also think that words matter, right? Words and actions, those are 2 things that really matter. But when we think about this, I think if we start telling police officers that they should look for help, sometimes they stigmatize that concept and they say, I'm not weak, so I'm not going to ask for help.
Exactly.
So what we say in our organization when it comes to wellness is we're going to look for support to strengthen.
Okay.
So when we say, hey, you guys are allowed to look for support to strengthen, would it be worth it for you to get stronger as a husband, wife, son, daughter, protector?
Right.
Would it be would support to strengthen make sense? Right. They're like, yeah, then cool. And if something does happen, let's think about making it support to strength.
Right.
So just
I like that.
Yeah, just
I like
a
that.
thought process. So just different. And again, it's the care and concern behind it that matters. So help is still good, right? It's like, hey, in Norway, they want us to use, in law enforcement, they want us to use first name engagement, right? That's called the Norway model.
Okay.
The California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation has been looking at it.
Okay.
A lot of research says that if I have a first name and Solomon has a first name, that we can call each other first name. But once
Right.
I'm officer and Solomon's not, well, guess what?
No.
Now I'm officer and
Yeah,
he
he
ain't,
ain't.
right? Like, let me tell you who the officer is, right? So we try and look at first name engagement from a bunch of different angles. So hey,
Right. I'm
I'm Jason Lehman. I'm a police officer with Long Beach or whatever. It might
Yeah.
be, right? With LAPD, whatever. So we're looking at that now, but I think that it's not the exact words; it's the way I deliver that. Because if I'm hey, I'm Jason, right?
Right.
That doesn't work. But if hey, I'm Officer Lehman, and I'm here, but right, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
That's me
Yeah.
showing I'm here for you.
Yeah.
When the culture feels like we have, it's a whole nother conversation, but we have this triangle of impact. And the triangle of impact looks like the rank and file officers, the executive team on one side, the community on the other, and then resources on the other. When I feel like everyone is buying into my wellness and that I can look at somebody and say, hey, I need a moment, and I know that's going to be supported,
Yeah.
I'll do it.
Right. You'd be more
When
likely to do
when
it.
I hear my
Yeah.
sergeants at roll
sure.
call or line up or whatever it is, when I hear my sergeants
Yeah.
at briefing say,
Yeah.
"Hey, I'm in therapy right now, and I
Right.
had a session 2 days ago. Man, it crushed me, but I just want you guys to know that I'm in therapy, because if I'm not in therapy, that's probably when I'm gonna get fired."
And that goes
Right.
back to what we talked about, vulnerability.
Yeah, that's right.
right?
That's right.
Goes
Yeah.
back to that V word, man.
Yeah.
The V word is strong.
Yeah.
Vulnerability.
Yep.
Okay, so look, I want to know, and we're kind of going a little longer than we.
I know we are. There's
normally would.
timers over here and the cameras.
great
and
conversation.
screen. Wait,
Aren't
we're
you guys-
recording this thing? Nobody told me we were recording this. Like, nah, I'm just
This is
messing
a
up.
great conversation, but I know you guys are used to shorter podcasts for me, but it's just such good information from Jason. Really quick, tell us, one, what does a community training essentially look like? I know you do scenario based, right? And if there's a community member, an organization that's watching this, that's interested in your training, how can they find you? If
Awesome.
there's a department, how can they find you?
Cool. All right. So community training is real easy. We customize our training anywhere from a 40-minute classroom session, so we can go into schools and fit their school clock, all the way up to a 7-hour what we call full day engagement, which we do for resisting arrest diversion in a number of different counties, where if somebody gets arrested by a police officer because they asked too many questions or came too close to the officer or stuff like that, low level, without cops getting hurt, low level resisting arrest stuff.
Yeah.
What that looks like is, it looks like getting a community to understand, first of all, that the instructors and facilitators are for them. And then we put them in the shoes of the police officer to go through scenarios and kind of understand what this looks like. That's what the community training looks like. For the police training looks like us proving to the best in the room that the best have to get better.
Yeah.
And showing us what it looks like to be able to know what success looks like. Because a lot of the times success feels like a felony or like 10 tickets.
Right.
But that's not success.
It's not.
It's not, right?
But it is in our culture.
It is in our, it can be.
Unfortunately. In
It
the
can be a
police
measure.
culture.
Yeah, it can be in our culture, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's changing, but we try and accelerate that process. And ultimately, by showing somebody what success looks like, it, for lack of better terms, checks a lot of boxes for law enforcement leadership. But while checking boxes, it also helps the training to create a servant, a protector that can develop and get better.
Yes.
If they want our training, whether it be on the community side or the law enforcement side, the cool part about our law enforcement training is we have a very, very, we have a big grant in the state of California.
Nice.
And we can provide our training to post-certified police agencies free of charge.
Very nice.
Yeah,
Did you guys hear that?
100
$3.99.
That's what I'm talking about. If it's free, it's for me. That's how it works.
Right.
And then for the community training, locally in Long Beach, we do about 2 or 3 trainings a year in just locally in Long Beach, and those are free through our nonprofit. Why'd You Stop Me?
Nice.
We're gonna have a training coming up with the Long Beach City Prosecutor's Office interns.
Okay.
And so they're gonna go. They're community members, never been cops, don't even have an idea of being a cop.
Right.
They're going to a different part of the justice system, and we're gonna go and do training with of them. But the best way to reach us to do any of those trainings is just by going to wysm.org, or emailing info@wisdom.org, sending me a direct message on Instagram.
Right.
Instagram is like the communication tool of the future. So
Right.
it doesn't go down in my DMs, but you can DM me. Like, so there's a difference there. There's a difference in what I just said, but Jason Lehman 6'4". And what we do is, for outside of Long Beach, for a nominal fee, we put on training. But the goal of our nonprofit is to provide free or discounted training to At Promise youth, to be able to help them to develop and understand how to do that, while also offering free training to California law enforcement officers. So that's how the nonprofit structure works. There's a for-profit entity aside from that. So we do consulting on a different side, and help out with leadership stuff, and that's kind of how it all works. But just reach out to me, or reach out to Officer Jill. Check out the website, whatever. We'll find a way to connect. If they want to connect, we're gonna do it. We don't like to say no to anybody.
I love that.
So,
I love that. Listen, you guys, I am gonna put obviously all of Jason's information into the description of this video below. If for whatever reason you missed what he just said, we're gonna put all his contact information. Jason, man, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I know we probably could have sat here and talked for 10 hours.
I mean,
dude.
Yeah.
And I didn't get through all my questions. I didn't, but it's okay.
Maybe in a couple of years we'll come back or something.
Exactly.
We'll figure it out.
We're running back, right?
Yeah,
and I know you're going to come back with so much more success. I appreciate what you are doing. I can't thank you enough. And keep pushing through, man.
I appreciate it. My success comes in your success and the success of every listener on the podcast.
Yeah.
The reason why the listeners are listening to this podcast is because they want to improve.
Right.
And a lot of the times what people like yourself or Solomon or any of the people that put on a podcast are need to be reminded of is that this exists because somebody asked, you were assigned to do this.
Yes.
There is purpose in helping others to get better. So anybody that is listening to this, all I would ask them to do when they turn off the podcast or shut off YouTube, whatever this is, wherever they can see this, is to just take a moment and rewrite their personal mission statement.
I like that.
What does that personal mission statement look like? And part of it is hopefully having to do with helping people.
Right.
No
or create one if you don't have one, right?
Yeah, or create one. Yeah, absolutely. Create one.
And I love that.
I love that.
You're a
too.
wise man.
Yeah, I appreciate you. I don't know about all that, but they say wisdom comes in years. I don't know what that means. But I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Listen, you guys, thank you again for tuning in to another episode of The Human Side. If you guys liked it, if you have any comments, go ahead and leave a comment in the bottom here. Feel free to subscribe, hit that alert button, share it with a friend, share it with someone that you think can learn from this. But most importantly, y'all, you know the drill. If you show me your human side, I show you mine. All right, y'all. Peace.